Help me welcome Ulf.
5G, the first time I ever heard about 5G was roughly 10 years ago. So a leading magazine reached out and asked me if I could write an article about 5G. In 2012, most of us were using 3G. At some locations, we had 4G, and we were very happy when we had 4G coverage. And whatever 5G was, at that point, only a handful of people knew. But long story short, I put together an article, and I concluded that the 5G networks would be intelligent networks that would connect the world without boundaries. So I envisioned a network that would be a very including standard. We would have devices, assets, human beings, all in one network. And one part of this vision was that it would be a network that would be useful both indoors and outdoors, so we can travel wherever we wanted without losing 5G coverage. So Proactivity's offering is very essential to fulfill this vision that I had 10 years ago. So the 5G standard was eventually put together, and it's based on 3 extreme use cases. So in the top of the pyramid, we have enhanced mobile broadband, fast internet connection in our mobile devices. In another part of this triangle, we have ultra-reliable, low latency communication, the remote-controlled cars, remote surgery, all these cool things we can do with 5G. And the last part of this corner is where we have massive IoT. Internet of Things with millions of sensors deployed per square kilometer. So why do we need 5G to fulfill this vision of the Internet of Things? Some people say that by 2030, we will interact with up to 3,000 sensors per day. So each and every one of us will meet 3,000 sensors in a day. And then we need reliable, secure, and scalable networks. And this is the sweet spot for 5G IoT. So what is IoT and Internet of Things then? Well, to me, IoT is one of the greatest recipes. It consists of basically 3 ingredients. So we want to monitor things, connect with things, or position things. So we want to monitor things like the indoor air quality in this room, the temperature, humidity, for example. Or we want to control things, using actuators to turn off the ventilation, to start a pump, to do something, to interact with something. Or we just want 5G to be able to find things. And I'm not talking about things that find GPS signals. 5G can actually be used as a positioning network as well. So we can have access to finding even small things with just 5G. So IoT is about mixing these 3 things: connecting with things, finding things, and monitoring things. In the past, we were used to building silos with different applications, different systems. But with IoT, we can mix and match together, so we can create great recipes just based on these 3 ingredients. So IoT opens a lot of new business models. And I strongly suggest that you look at IoT with an open mind. So I'll share an example. A Swedish company designed a sensor. They wanted to measure how much water was being consumed in public restrooms. They wanted to do so because they wanted to send water consumption data to the financial department, so they could keep track of how much water was being consumed at water taps. They did a first test installation, and everything seemed to work fine. So they were happy, took a flight back to Sweden, most likely had a very sleepless night because they were anxious to see what kind of data these sensors were reporting. Next morning, they woke up and they logged into the platform. All sensors were reporting data as expected, but there was one sensor that didn't report any water consumption at all. So they got anxious and called someone local and asked them to go out there. And he or she opened the door to the toilet and realized there wasn't any lights on that toilet. The bulb was broken. So with IoT, you can start imagining how to build a system. And in this case, they wanted to measure water consumption. But looking at it with an open mind, they have designed a system that could predict if the lights were working or not. And if you want to build a new business model, you could actually put 2 more sensors in this device. You can have a proximity sensor and a light sensor. And then you will have data to share with the cleaning company. So you can sell information to them. Let's assume that 25 visitors at a toilet, well, that's a trigger to get someone out there to clean the toilet. Or if someone opens the door and the lights don't go on, well, then there is something broken. Or someone opens the door and don't want to enter the toilet. Could be a trigger to send someone out there to clean. As a bonus, you would of course know how many people actually went to the toilet without washing their hands, but that's a side business that we need to treat confidentially. So with an open mind and IoT, you can create new business models and sell data to other stakeholders. This is sort of a technology session. How many of you are from the telecom business? So some of you, good. And for the other ones, low power wide area network, a techie term. I spoke about the Internet of Things, sensors, actuators, and so on. If that's one part of an IoT device, the other part is the wireless technology that actually sends data to some kind of wireless network. Could be 5G or something else. Low power, wide area network. Using low power, covering wide area, and yes, it's a network. So sort of self-explanatory. There are different technologies we can use in properties. We can use 5G, LoRaWAN, we can use Bluetooth, and we can use Wi-Fi. The difference is with 5G, most of the time we want to do 5G because we want an operator. In some cases, we use LoRaWAN with an operator, or we build our own networks. The sweet spot with 5G is that it uses licensed spectrum. So spectrum is dedicated to the operators. The other technologies are using free frequencies, meaning that you have to compete with other users as well. So when you decide what technology to choose, there are a lot of different aspects. Total cost of ownership. Let's assume you build your own network using any of these technologies that uses free spectrum. What is your total cost of ownership? What does it cost to maintain the network, to have support whenever it's needed, to predict indoor coverage? All these questions is something you have to consider yourself if you're not relying on an operator. So with an operator, you pay a premium. You pay a fixed cost per SIM card per month. But the rest is sort of up to them. And they have practiced for almost 30 years from GSM, 3G, 4G, 5G to make it happen. There are other things to consider as well. Battery life, for example. Exchanging batteries is very costly. So if an IoT device is cheap, changing batteries is costly. Coverage is also a factor that will affect your battery life. Good indoor coverage or bad indoor coverage. If you have bad indoor coverage, you may have 5 years of battery life. Good indoor coverage, 20. So indoor coverage is very important. And that's why we need to get 5G inside the buildings as well. Availability, one very important thing. LoRaWAN, for example, can only use 1% of the time to transmit and talk to the system. It has to be quiet 99% of the time. That means that if you're in a situation where you have an alarm situation, you still have to be quiet 99% of the time. And that's a bonus with the 5G networks, that you can use it as much as you want, whenever you want. So either you build the networks yourself, using any of the free technologies, or you use a partner that can provide indoor coverage to give you support when you need, and also help you with what kind of technology to choose. It's very easy to try to do everything yourself, and you end up running around like the busy cat because you haven't been thinking about all the aspects you needed to think about. So in a nutshell, 5G is a flexible standard, so it can replace Wi-Fi, both for sensors and also for the enhanced mobile broadband, if you want fast internet connection. I see that future offices may not even have a Wi-Fi. Perhaps you will have 5G in your computer, because then there are a lot of security concerns that are taken away, because then you have your own network, for example. 5G can also complement LoRaWAN and other technologies using free spectrum. Indoors, it could be used instead of running a cable to each gateway, for example. So faster installation time. But most importantly, 5G can work as a standalone standard because it fulfills many different needs, as described in this pyramid. So who needs IoT then? I'm sure that some of you work for organizations that has a scope of saving the environment. And somewhere in your business plan, you may even consider that you want to improve health among coworkers, among citizens, among tenants. And perhaps you want to save costs as well. Luckily, IoT can help you with those three things. But start looking at IoT from a business perspective and not a technical perspective. That's my message, being a tech geek myself. So if you look at it from a business perspective, you can measure occupancy, and you can use data from the occupancy measurements to control lights. Whenever no one is there, you don't have to have any lights on. You can control ventilation, because if there's only 10 people in a room, you don't have to use the ventilation for 200 people. So there are a lot of things we can use simple sensors with IoT to actually gain, big savings for both the wallet and the environment. Something simple as waste bins. If we empty the waste bins whenever they need to be emptied, and not when we think they need to be emptied, we can save up to 40 to 50% costs by just going there when they need, not when we need to go there. Also, air quality. In some occasions, we tend to have too much ventilation. In other times, too little ventilation. In the UK, for example, it's mandatory to measure CO2 levels at workspaces. And I'm quite sure that a lot of workplaces will focus on air quality in a near future. This is an effect that we have seen after COVID, because pure air is becoming as important as pure water. And to fulfill this vision, we need to deploy 30 trillion devices, right? Or maybe 50 gazillion devices. Well, I don't really see that this number matters. We don't need to fill the world with IoT devices. But you're clever people, and you're here because you want to know more about this. So I would like to challenge you to help me to break the world record. Not in the number of devices we put out on the market, but rather the meaningful applications we put out there. So the number of meaningful IoT devices, they can make a change for a lot of things, for humanity. So let's help each other to break the world record. And that was all I had. Thank you very much.